So now we're going to stratify to a table, and we're going to use a script to actually make this a lot easier for us. But the stratify command allows you to stratify your work to a table. However, the results are not usually the best in that the actual data looks more like a number and needs to be converted over into something that's more readable. So that's what we do in this particular script, where we create a table for the stratify, and then we rename the field so it looks a lot better. And then that way, that's your final result that you can utilize in more summaries and classifications, which we'll show. So now in the paid file, we can stratify this information based on invoice amount, just like before. And I'm just going to copy and paste the categories in there like before, so that makes it a lot easier just to copy and paste. And however, now what I'm going to change is in my output, I'm going to go to a file, select ACL table, and call it Stratify Table, just to be really simple. And this creates a particular table. Now note that my invoice amount, and this is the minimum value for each strata, is actually something that is set up in a format that is readable, and I guess it does make sense. But what we can do is convert that number here into something a lot nicer to look at, which is more like here. So again, these numbers here, 100, 500, whatever, would actually turn into 10, 0 to 99, 11, 12, 13, etc. So again, looking at the Stratify table, we have our strata here. These are the minimum values, so it's 100 to 499.99, then 500 here, going to 999.99, and this is the count that's within that strata. So again, in this case, it would be the 500 to the 9999, and the percent of count, percent of field, the field being the invoice amount that we've added together. You could have more fields here if you wanted to add more items. That would be fine. And another thing, just to walk this one step through, is if I go back to my paid invoice file and I sort this file, just kind of quickly doing this on enterer ID, and do this to a file called sorted, I can actually go back in my log if I wanted to. I mean, it's pretty simple what we did, but we followed this approach here. However, I'm just going to edit that command, and in doing this, in the More button, I'm actually going to put a break, and that break will be for the enterer ID. So now in this table that is sorted, so we are in the sorted file, we are going to stratify it. It's going to put it to that table, and notice now you have a nice table that maybe you even put into Excel and graph in some way, or whatever you want to do with it. But again, let's change now this label to be something that looks a lot nicer and more usable. So going back to our stratification script, what I have is some code for creating a stratify range field. And the code here, again, when we create a new field in a table, so in this particular case, we have this field here that we're trying to convert, and that's in the Stratify table. We can go to Edit, Table Layout, and once we're here, we can define a field by adding a new expression, typing out that field. We would have a default value. Let me just put something in here which will allow you to add conditions, and these conditions will be here. So I'm just going to do this in more of a quicker fashion in the interest of time, and the script also comes with the video, so it's something you can just run yourself. But what I can do is, if I run this script, if I even just cut and paste this information out, or copy it and create a new script on its own, and I'll save changes to that one, sure. Excuse me, just looking like that, and we could just call this Stratify Field Creation. Now, this script alone will actually run off of the Stratify Range field. Now, what you would need to do is to make sure that you're actually using the field name. In this case, I have a variable. Now, what we could do very, very quickly here is just note that variable name, and I can write assign invoice amount equal to, and I believe it's called invoice amount in my actual data file. But what you want to make sure that you do is to put quotation marks around the actual field, and that'll lock in the field name as the variable assignment. So now that we go over to edit variables, the invoice amount variable that we just set up is that field name invoice amount. So going back to this Stratify field creation, the actual basically way we've set it up here, the invoice amount variable will now be set to invoice amount, which is that range here, and then it will calculate each one of these as conditions, working from the lowest to the highest. And if everything, I guess, I don't know, if none of this works out, it goes to blank, but you really shouldn't have that problem. And again, this is how you would set up a defined field statement in a script. You have to put a blank line in between here, or a carriage return in between whenever you have the actual if statement, and these are the conditions, and then your default value with no if statement is your final value there. Let me just kind of run that field creation Stratify script. And now that I have that, I can actually add the Stratify Range field, which gives a lot more character to the data, gives me a sort order to work on. If I put this into a pivot table or any sort of Excel, it'll sort much better in this scenario with the 10, 11, 12. So again, just much more usable way of working with the data. Now, rather than go through all of the script creation, I'm going to run the stratification script that will come with the sample files with this video. Just going to run that, and I'm going to select the paid invoice file, and I'm going to select from the paid invoice file the invoice amount field. And instead of I could pick check date, I guess I'll pick check date in this case. I really could pick whatever I'd like here, but I'll pick check date. And what that did was it created this year-month stratification. And what it did was it not only has this Stratify range that we've seen that's a little harder to read, but we have our converted version, which I'm going to kind of replace. We have the count, the percentage of count, etc. I even put in a Stratify order, if that helps. It's kind of just the 9, 10, which again, 9, 10. So it makes it a little easier to work with if you're in a data table. And you have your totals, again, in each strata. Now, the first set are blank, again, because we didn't have payment data. But as we get into the other data here and have a stratification, then we have that pay year month as well as the Stratify range. Now, let's take a look at that script quickly. I don't want us to become experts in this whole script, because you can just run it, and it works quite nicely. Now, it will create these pay month year fields, pay year field, and down below, it'll then complete that statistics as well as stratify on the data. Now, when we talked about the break before, where we braked on the pay year month in this particular data, this is how you denote a break within your code. You actually use the word key instead of break. So then below we have that Stratify range field. The order kind of works the same way as explained. And actually, we export it to Excel if you'd like to have that, and then it concludes. So it's not that hard of a script, but I wanted to note when you break on something, as we do here between that blank and this 1996-01, it actually is using the word key in the script itself.